Friends, family, and honored guests, it is such a pleasure to see you all once again. Thank you for joining us tonight as we wrap up the last two powerful and meaningful days. As we close our Yom HaShoah as a community, we are reminded of the acts of heroism during the Shoah and beyond, in which our people decided to take matters into their own hands and bring light into the world. From the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising to the founding of the State of Israel, Jewish young people have never backed away from a challenge. We, the youth, have the power to create change, to make a difference in the world, and to embrace the sentiment of never again. When we met a little over a week ago to plan out our Yom HaShoah events for this year, and in this new reality, this was just an idea. We expected some communities to host programs and maybe to have around 20 in total. However, what we saw was an incredible response, and over the last 2 days, we have hosted over 50 Yom HaShoah programs on BBYO On Demand in more than 20 countries.
Of course, the highlight of our events has been hosting Holocaust survivors as part of our Zikaron Basalon initiative. Yesterday, I had the honor of hosting a wonderful and inspiring woman named Estelle Nadel. After hearing her story, I was devastated that such horrible atrocities could happen to a 7-year-old just because she was Jewish. But I was inspired to take action, which is the exact purpose of Yom HaShoah. We must remember the savage acts of the Nazis so that we can fight anti-Semitism and hate today. We say never again, not just to prevent future genocides against our people and all people, but to prevent the little things that happen every day. From the jokes our friends make to the white nationalist rallies we see happening in the world. Never again is now, and we are feeling inspired to take action now to build a better and brighter world.
Yesterday, I hosted a Zikaron Basalon program with my grandfather, Max Drabinski. When he was 4 years old, Germany invaded Poland and World War II began. As the Nazis continued to move eastward, his family was forced to flee their home in southern Belarus and escape to Saratov, Russia. His father was drafted, and our family did not know if he was alive throughout most of the war. My grandfather grew up in hiding, a childhood I couldn't imagine living. It wasn't until Nazi Germany was defeated that he returned to his hometown. By then, much of his extended family had perished. He continued to face anti-Semitism after the Holocaust and was fortunate enough to immigrate in 1980. Having my grandfather speak was incredibly empowering. When I was little, he would tell me stories from when he was my age. My grandpa has always been open about his experiences, but it wasn't until yesterday that he told his story to an audience. Stories like his aren't often told, and we owe it to him and the next generation to keep them alive. The Holocaust was a nuanced yet distinctly evil moment in our history. Every survivor's story deserves to be remembered so as to create a future free of such horrors.
Today, I'm not only reflecting on the millions of lives lost, but treasuring the perseverance of the survivors. I had the pleasure of hearing dozens of survivors tell their stories, and the honor to host a second-generation Holocaust survivor on a Zikaron Basalon program in Hebrew, in partnership with Maccabi Tzair Israel. Shlomit spoke today about her father. She spoke about the hardships in his journey, but one thing about it all stood out to me. Her father refused to talk about what really happened to him until one of his grandsons had a project about the Holocaust. Shlomit told her son to ask his Saba, but that he probably wouldn't tell him as he never shares his story. But Noam sat down with the recorder, and his grandfather told him everything about his experiences in history. He wouldn't tell anyone else and didn't talk about it again after that, even when his other grandchildren had asked. I felt that this was important because although it was hard for him to talk about, he knew that this story needed to be carried on, and he chose the youngest generation to do so. It has often been said that as the younger generation, we will be the last to meet and be able to hear the survivors tell their own stories. This serves as a stark reminder to me that it is on us to take the lessons that we learn from their words and experiences and continue to pass them along. The words never again need to be taken from a dream to a reality. We must ensure that the future generations are able to reflect on the stories of survivors, rescuers, and even resistors. We can't stand idly by in the face of hate, discrimination, and injustice. When we stand together, we have the power to turn never again into a worldwide reality.
To honor Yom HaShoah this year, I reached out to someone very close to me and my family and who recently helped start an incredible project. Jessica Wang is the co-founder of a newly formed group of New Jersey-based grandchildren of Holocaust survivors called 3GNJ. This group is passionate about sharing their family stories, and I find their commitment to Holocaust education to be truly inspiring. 3GNJ recognizes that the number of Holocaust survivors is declining, and I'm moved by their initiative to take action. Learning about the Holocaust is critical now more than ever, and this experience truly taught me that. As we close out our commemoration of Yom HaShoah, I recognize my responsibility to remember and educate myself and others about the Holocaust, and I encourage you all to do the same. To me, this is the true meaning of the Jewish concept of L'dor v'dor, from generation to generation.
Having the honor to host a Holocaust survivor this year taught me the importance of Yom HaShoah in a way I've never understood before. I had the pleasure of hosting Ernest Gross, a Holocaust survivor from Romania, for a Zikaron Barcelona session. Mr. Gross is such a sweet, caring man who touched me with his incredible story. He was born and raised in a small town in Romania where there were only 200 Jewish families. Mr. Gross faced bullying and criticism from his peers and even teachers as a child just because he was Jewish. Learning about his experience made me realize how lucky and grateful I am to be able to live freely and celebrate my Judaism. I have a newfound sense of appreciation for being active in my Jewish community and know that because of my experience this Yom HaShoah, I will encourage others to as well.
For many years now, Eric and I have had the privilege of staffing a program called March of the Living, a program that takes young people to Poland and Israel, and we march from Auschwitz to Auschwitz-Birkenau to celebrate life and to remember all of those souls that were lost during the Holocaust. This year, we would be there right now, and this experience has every year for me regrounded me, inspired me, and reminded me every year how important it is for all of us to remember to educate ourselves and others and to act against hatred and anti-Semitism.
These words that we're about to sing, Gam ki elech begay, are referencing this moment of, even though we know we are in a moment of fear, even though we know we are in a place of great sadness, we know because of our peoplehood, because of our tradition, because of our faith, and because of our community, that we don't have to be in a place of fear. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about remembering as a people, remembering not only as a person, but as a people coming together to make sure that we never forget.
So join us in the words of Psalm 23. Gam ki elech begay, tzalma velo, lo irara. Gam ki elech begay, tzalma velo, lo irara. Lo irara ki ata imani. Lo irara ki ata imani. Gam ki elech begay, tzalma velo, lo irara.
While I didn't host a survivor myself this Yom HaShoah, I was able to attend a couple of programs and have heard numerous stories of people with different experiences from all over Europe. I remember that every Hanukkah, my neighbor, Susan Taub, who was a Holocaust survivor, would come to my house and share her story with my family. Her story will stick with me forever. She was born in a small town in Germany, and her family was one of about Jewish families living there. She faced Kristallnacht, getting moved to a ghetto, getting separated from her mother and sister, moving from concentration camp to concentration camp to concentration camp to concentration camp, and facing a pogrom in her new town even after the war. By the age of 20, she experienced more loss and hurt than I could even believe. These past few weeks, we've been experiencing a unique isolation. Unfortunately, I've heard people comparing their quarantines to being in the Holocaust. What I've learned from Susan's story and so many others now stick with me is that while we might be stuck at home, we're truly free. I believe that if more people learned about what actually happened to the victims, they would realize how many opportunities they actually have now. If they learned about what happened and shared the stories, the world would realize that the two situations are incomparable.
Please join us in these words and this melody by Dan Nichols. We are from the garden, we are from the flood, we are from the angels singing, all you need is love. We are from the mountain and the hope blowing on the wind. We are from the Holy One within. We are from the wandering, we are from the dream, we are from the fight to understand what freedom means. We are from the promise and the hope for a better land. We are from the marching hand in hand. We are from the wandering, we are from the dream, we are from the fight to understand what freedom means. We are from the promise and the hope for a better land. We are from the marching hand in hand.
As we gathered today with survivors, family members, friends, and the whole Jewish community, remember those who perished and those who are still with us, we are notably missing a dear friend of ours and a lifetime Aleph. We want to take a moment together to remember Bob Geminder, a Holocaust survivor and an inspiration to generations of Alephs and BBGs.
AZA, honestly, and I'm not kidding here, made what I would call a mensch out of me. So I came to this country without knowing any English. So joining AZA was just fantastic for me because, as I always say when I talk to people about it, overnight I had 35 friends. I'm hoping I can give back to these young people, make mensch, make them more Jewish, make them more caring for people. What started this horrible thing, 6 million Jewish people, 5 million non-Jewish people, 11 million people dying for no reason at all, is differences, people differences. This guy had a big nose, this guy is black, this guy is brown. So my message is everybody's the same. And I'm not trying to tell you that you need to love everybody. You don't have to love everybody, but respect is the key word. Respect everyone.
Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Claire Sarnowski, who is with us at International Convention in Dallas, and is the first recipient of the Bob Geminder Legacy Award. Claire has an inspiring story of truly embracing the concept of never again. We are delighted to call her a dear friend of ours. Claire, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I think that as we reflect and take the time to gather today, even if it's virtually, we are still able to remember all the lives lost and all the survivors and those who were deeply affected by the horrors of the Holocaust. And it's a reminder to say never again, not just today, but every day, and never forget what happened. For me, getting involved with Holocaust education, it was to not only educate my peers, but educate future generations. It's so important that these stories live on. My dear friend who was a Holocaust survivor, Alter Wiener, was able to work on the bill with me. And I know that it was his dream to inspire the future generation. It is up to us to do that and inspire each other and future generations. Practice love, kindness, not tolerate bigotry, hatred, or anti-Semitism, and come together as one to create an environment of love, kindness, respect, and gratitude, and be the generation that says never again.
Thank you, Claire, for being with us and for sharing your inspiration with us today. To close our evening and our Yom HaShoah together, we want to encourage you to take with you one name and one story that you'll have the responsibility to pass along to future generations. Whether that be a family member, friend, or a survivor you may have only met today, commit their name to memory and their story to memory, and make a pledge to share it with others. If you have a name, story, or person you're remembering this Yom HaShoah, share it with us in the chat now as a public commitment of your pledge to never forget.
Must have been walked down before you can must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years can a mountain exist before it's washed to the sea? Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? How many times can a man turn his head, pretending he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times can a man look up before he can see the sky? Yes, and how many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Inspired by all of these stories of hope, perseverance, and strength, we commit to making Never Again a reality. We hope you leave today's ceremony inspired to carry on the legacy of our ancestors. May you go on from strength to strength. Thank you for joining us.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing